Hello, everyone. Welcome, and I hope all of you and your families are well and safe in this difficult time. And I hope we're all practicing the social distancing that is painful personally and also economically, but is critical in order to starve off the virus. As I've said many times during this period of time, we either are part of the solution or will be part of the statistics. And I think we all want to be part of the solutions. I wanted to use this opportunity. I know my office reached out to chambers of commerce across the state to offer an opportunity to give insights into the law that we passed that is in effect and to maximize for small business owners in New Jersey the greatest access to the programs that are available and that they may feel are available to them. So with that, I'm going to go through a series of slides and information. All of this information so that if you're not able to jot it down as we go along or you miss a certain slide is available on our website, which I'll give at the end. And our offices are also available to answer any questions while we're working remotely. All of our staff, both in Washington and in New Jersey, are on their computers and on their phones and can be responsive to any questions. So there are many different provisions of the federal law. Our focus today is those that may be related to small businesses. We also have a lot of work here that we did on direct payments to individuals, on the question of unemployment, on the question of helping our hospitals, helping state revenues that have seen a dramatic fall, obviously. And so those are other elements of the law. You can see those on our website if you're interested in that. I'm going to try to focus on those things that may be related to small business owners. So let me start with our federal response. Next slide, please. I'm going to break down the law. The law is called the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It provides nationally $377 billion in support to small businesses. And how does it do that? It does that through a couple of different programs. Number one, the Paycheck Protection Program, the Emergency Economic Injury Grants, a debt relief for existing and new SBA borrowers. So you have, if you're an existing SBA borrower and have faced some of the challenge with COVID-19, there are some debt relief possibilities for you. Paid leave for government contractors and resources for business counseling services. Next slide. The CARES Act provides $349 billion in new SBA 7A loans through a program we call the Paycheck Protection Program. Importantly, if the proceeds of the Paycheck Protection Program, the loan that you seek and acquire, are used for number one, payroll costs, for mortgage interest payments, for rent, utilities, that portion of the loan is forgivable, meaning when you show that you have used certain amounts of your loan for payroll costs, mortgage interest payments, rent, utilities, that part of the loan is forgiven. In essence, it becomes a grant. This program, we call it PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, has a host of attractive features, such as forgiveness of up to 8 weeks of payroll based on employee retention and salary levels, no SBA fees, interest rates at around 1%, and at least 6 months of deferral with a potential maximum deferral of up to 1 year. Next slide, please. Now, who qualifies for this Paycheck Protection Program S7A loan? Small businesses or nonprofits with 500 or fewer employees. If a business has more than 500 employees but has a higher employee threshold or meets a revenue threshold according to the SBA's NIACS table, and that business could qualify as well as a small business. But for the most part, this is 500 employees or less. If you are a restaurant or hotel business, that employ fewer than 500 employees per location, meaning, let's say you have 3 hotels, and that the sum of the 3 hotels, you have a total of more than 500, but per location you have less than 500, then those are eligible individually. And individuals who operate a sole proprietorship or as an independent contractor and eligible self-employed individuals are also, we had a negotiation to expand the definition of who is eligible. And for many of us in New Jersey, we thought this expanded definition is incredibly important. New slide. What's the maximum amount of the loan? It can be up to $10 million. The amount of the loan depends largely on your payroll expenses. And roughly your small business could receive up to 2.5 times the average total monthly payments for payroll costs incurred by your small business from the last year. Next slide. What costs are eligible for payroll costs that then is eligible for forgiveness? Well, they are compensation, salary, wage, commission, or a similar compensation payment, payment for employee vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for dismissal or separation, a payment required for the provisions of group health benefits, including insurance premiums, payment of any retirement benefit. These are benefits that would normally be existing with your business if you have these with your employees, and payment of state or local taxes assessed on the compensation of employees. Those are all eligible for forgiveness if that's how you use your loan. Next slide, please. When and where can I apply for the Paycheck Protection Program? Well, you can apply already for PPP loans as of today, as you could have applied just a few days ago. Independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply for these loans beginning on April 10th. The loans are available through June the 30th of 2020. And to find how do I go about applying, SBA doesn't do this directly. They do it through approved lenders. And to find an approved lender in your location, you can go to this page, www.sba.gov/paycheck-protection/find, www.sba.gov/paycheck-protection/find, and hook up with an approved lender. Now, many of you may have banking institutions, relationship with banking institutions. Those that are approved lenders, those will work as well. But if you don't, then this site will help you hook up with a potential lender. Next slide, please. I had to let go of a majority of my employees before and because of the crisis. So then how can I help them? You can rehire your employees because the forgivable amount is calculated based on your average total monthly payments for payroll costs between February 15th of last year and June 30th of last year. You can maintain the workforce size your business had during this period of time. Loan proceeds used to compensate your employees, again, would be forgiven. So this is the time period that will be used to calculate. Next slide. There is also a separate program called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. These are a grant, not a loan, a grant providing an emergency advance of up to $10,000. Doesn't mean everybody get $10,000, but of up to $10,000 to small businesses and private nonprofits that are harmed by COVID-19 within 3 days of applying for an SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And to access the advance, you have to first apply for an EIDL, an Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and then request the advance. The advance does not need to be repaid under any circumstance, and it can be used to keep employees on the payroll, to pay for sick leave. If you produce a product and you have increased production costs due to supply chain disruptions, it's eligible for that. For business obligations, including debts, rents, and mortgage interest payments. Next slide. Who's eligible for EIDL? It's small businesses, again, with 500 or fewer employees, sole proprietorships with or without employees, independent contractors, cooperatives, and employee-owned businesses, and then for some other places in the country, tribal small businesses. And to apply for an EIDL is a little different site with SBA. It's disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. And your small business district office is an important resource for this particular loan. Next slide. These are basically the difference. Again, Paycheck Protection Act, up to $10 million loan. Part of it can be forgiven for those purposes. The injury disaster loan is up to $10,000. The one note I would take from this slide is that a small business cannot use the economic injury disaster loan grant for the same purposes as their PPP loan. So if you use your economic injury disaster loan to cover payroll for certain workers in April, you can't use the PPP for payroll for the same workers in April. You could use them for different workers in April or for workers in March, but you can, in essence, get two bites at the same apple. Next slide. There is a small business debt relief program is designed to deal with your fears about keeping up with payments on your current, some of you may have an SBA loan or potential SBA loan. The program will provide immediate relief to small businesses with non-disaster SBA loans, and under it, SBA will cover all loan payments on these SBA loans, including principal, interest, and fees for up to 6 months. Next slide. Which SBA loans are eligible for debt relief under this program? 7A loans not made under the Paycheck Protection Program I just discussed, the new program. 504 loans and microloans. Disaster loans are not eligible. How does debt relief under this program work? With a PPP loan, borrowers have to apply separately and take out a PPP loan, but debt relief under this program will not apply to a PPP loan. So this is really intended more for those who have a present SBA loan in the mainstream. Next slide. Now, understanding that some of our business community in the state may be a little larger than the 500 size, just want to quickly go through a different provision of the law for mid-sized businesses. Next slide. Treasury and the Federal Reserve are going to implement what they call a special loan facility targeted specifically at nonprofit organizations and businesses between 500 and 10,000 employees. We're not quite sure when the timing of this facility is going to be open, but I spoke to the Secretary of the Treasury today on several things. And I think there's going to be an announcement tomorrow, so we'll keep our eyes open for that. If you're bigger than 500, you want to be looking at that. But we do know some of the criteria that's in the law itself already that is going to have to be met, so I'm going to briefly go through that. One, the funds that is received, this is a business, now remember, greater than 500, has to be used to retain at least 90% of the recipient's workforce with full compensation and benefits through September 30th of this year. It has to be domiciled. The business has to be domiciled in the United States, and its employees have to be predominantly located in the United States. The recipient of the loan cannot be in bankruptcy. There can be no stock buybacks or dividends until the loan is no longer outstanding. Next slide. The recipient can't outsource or offshore jobs for the terms of the loan plus an additional 2 years. The recipient can't abrogate existing collective bargaining agreements for the term of the loan plus an additional 2 years. And the recipient has to remain neutral in any union organizing effort for the term of the loan. And there are limits on executive compensation. Next slide. I've often been asked by small business owners about the direct payments that the law provides to individuals and families and how they or family members will ultimately benefit. So I'm going to briefly go through that now. Who's eligible to get a check? Anyone who filed a tax return in 2018, or if they filed their 2019, or who currently receives Social Security benefits is eligible for a direct payment. How much will I get? Individual tax filers who have an adjusted gross income up to $75,000 and head of household filers with an adjusted gross income up to $112,500 will receive $1,200 for the joint filers, $1,200, I'm sorry. Joint filers with an adjusted gross income up to $150,000 will receive $2,400. And there's an additional $500 for every child age 17 or under who is a dependent child. And lastly, if you're above those amounts in any of those categories, your refund will basically be reduced by a rate of $5 for every $100. So as a way of calculating, if you're at that or below, you get the full refund. Not the full direct payment I just described. If you're over those amounts, you still are eligible for a payment, but reduced by that a rate of about roughly $5 for every $100. Next slide. How will I get the money? For those of you who, when you filed your tax returns, created a direct deposit, the funds will be remitted at direct deposit if that account is on record with the IRS. If you don't have an account on record with the IRS, then a physical check will be mailed to the address the tax return was filed from. And we soon expect release information on how to apply to receive a direct deposit instead of a check from the IRS. We don't quite have that yet if you don't have a previously designated direct deposit. When will I get my check? Money sent direct deposit, probably going to take 2 weeks or so from when we originally passed the law, 3 weeks from when we originally passed the law. If you're getting an actual rebate check because you don't have a direct deposit, that may take, according to the Treasury, a few months. This is something we've been pushing hard on the Treasury. We say people need the money now, and we would think that with taxpayer records, it would be very capable of sending this out and in a computer basis that would determine who's eligible for what amount. I'm often asked, is the money taxable that you'll receive in these direct payments? The answer is, what if I have a lien against me? The money's not subject to garnishment unless, there's only one exception, if back child support is owed, then yes, it is subject to garnishment. But other than that, any other lien, it is not subject to garnishment. Next slide. Okay, unemployment insurance. Let me go through this briefly. For those who may have had to file for unemployment insurance, the exact amount you receive in unemployment insurance benefit depends on your on the state, obviously here in New Jersey, and your previous earnings. But New Jerseyans can receive approximately 60% of their average earnings up to a maximum of $713. That's the state ceiling. Between now, however, and July 31st, in addition to whatever your baseline is of an unemployment benefit that you would normally get, there will be an additional $600 added to every weekly unemployment benefit check. So at a minimum, no one should receive less than $600, but it should be whatever you would normally get under unemployment plus $600 until that is July 31st. Next slide. How do I file for unemployment insurance? myunemployment.nj.gov, directly on the site, and there are numbers there to call in northern, central, and southern New Jersey. I know they're somewhat overwhelmed by the number of claims, but you should just stay on it and file your claim if you're eligible for this. Next slide. So we amassed, knowing that, having done many of these for different groups since we passed the law, we got a series of questions through the different chambers, and we amalgamated them to try to maximize the answers to what are most common questions that we have received. They may not cover everything that everybody on the call has in mind, but there are about, I don't know, 15 or 20 questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can, be as exact as we can in the information. But again, we invite you to look at our website that can have more specific information. And if you need further information, call our office and we will get you a specific answer. So let's go to the first question. Can sole proprietors, single contractors, or freelancers without employees be helped? Yes, the sole proprietors, independent contractors, eligible self-employed individuals qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program that I talked about earlier. And that is, again, a loan that can be up to $10 million, a large portion which can be forgiven. Again, if the proceeds are used for payroll costs, mortgage interest payments, rent, utilities, that portion of the loan is forgivable. So sole proprietors, independent contractors, and eligible self-employed individuals can apply for the PPP program and pay their salaries, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest payments from it. Next question. I'm hearing a lot of reports that SBA isn't able to process these loans and that new lenders aren't able to get approved to accept the PPP loan applications. What are you doing about that? Well, that was part of the conversation I had with the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary Mnuchin, today, that I've been hearing anecdotally from different companies and small businesses, that unless they have a corresponding relationship with a large bank or some other financial institution, that they're having difficulties in getting access to process that loan. And that we have to change that. There's a request on the table to put another $250 billion. I'm all in favor of augmenting the pot, but I want to make sure that everybody gets a legitimate shot at this, not just those who have a large bank connection and otherwise, everybody else has a difficulty. So we have also given extra money to the SBA to process the loans. And we have also had a very strong advocacy with the administration that new lenders need to get approved as well to be able to do the PPP program. So before we vote for a new tranche of money, these are some of the challenges and blemishes in the existing program that we insist have to be changed. Next question. How do I apply for assistance to retain or hire additional employees? First of all, as I said, under the PPP program, you can rehire your employees because the forgivable amount is calculated based on your average monthly payments for payroll costs between February 15th of 2019 and June 30th of 2019. And you can maintain the workforce size your business had during this time periods. And loans proceeds used to compensate your employees are going to be forgiven. Additionally, small businesses that rehire workers that are previously laid off are not going to be penalized for having a reduced payroll at the beginning of the period, as long as they eventually rehire. and small businesses have until June 30th of this year to restore the full-time employment and salary levels for any of the changes made between those previous dates of February and April of this year. There's one caveat. The forgiven amount is calculated based on your payroll costs between February and June of 2019. So if you want to hire employees in excess of the work size you had during that time period, those additional employee payroll costs might not be forgiven. Next slide, please. What can micro businesses with no full-time employees but contractors 1099s qualify for? So you can apply for the PPP, the SBA 7A loans, to cover your rent, utilities, and your salary. However, since independent contractors are not included as part of your payroll costs, your independent contractors should apply for a PPP loan on their own behalf, since they also are eligible. Next question. Why is government bailing out banks, airlines, and big businesses and forgetting about giving money to small or micro businesses? When are small businesses going to be bailed out? Well, this is one of the reasons that we insisted on a negotiation, because what was originally given to us did not have many of the provisions that we, in fact, have in this law for small businesses. The Paycheck Protection Act, loans up to $10 million, forgivable for a series of critical costs. The emergency loan as well, which is a direct grant up to $10,000. Those are all provisions that we fought for and are now part of the bill that was not part of what we were originally given. So, in terms of, we're not doing anything on big banks here. The airlines are getting money that was part of a negotiation, and the administration insisted on the airlines. They are a critical element of our overall economy to get people back and forth to different business opportunities, families to get together and whatnot. But at the end of the day, in their cases, they're going to have to give warrants, which are basically a promissory note to pay back that which they're getting to a large degree. But you can get, if you're a small or micro business, you are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Act. And I think that those are incredibly important opportunities to take advantage of. And if you're using it, as I said, for payroll, for rent, for mortgage interest, then that part of the loan will be forgiven and you won't be repaying back that amount. Next question. Are we paying employees at 100% even if we are mandated closed? Well, the Paycheck Protection Program is meant to encourage, the very name of it says a lot, employers to retain as many of their pre-COVID staff as possible at their previous salary wage rates. And those proceeds from the loan used to maintain your workforce and the salary rate previous to COVID-19 will be entirely forgiven. So small businesses will not have to repay any money that was used to maintain staff levels, even if your business is closed due to vital social distancing guidelines. Additionally, the forgiveness amount will be reduced proportionate to the amount of employee reduction in salary cuts. A small business that rehires workers previously laid off won't be penalized for having a reduced payroll at the beginning of the period, as long as they eventually rehire. And if your business is not open in 8 weeks yet due to the COVID-19 epidemic, you won't be penalized for laying employees after the 8-week period. although we are working to ensure that the program is extended or further aid is going to be provided to small businesses. Next slide. What is better for nonprofits, the Emergency Economic Injury Disaster Grant or the Paycheck Protection Program loan? Well, small businesses can apply for both the emergency grant and PPP, uh, and that would also be for nonprofits. Of course, emergency grants, which are up to $10,000, are meant to cover immediate needs like keeping employees on the payroll, uh, meeting sick leave obligations, rent, and certain other debts. So that's an immediate grant. The other program, it would depend upon, again, the PPP program for a nonprofit would depend upon, what your needs are, understanding the forgivable parts of that loan, which I've said several times, that if you apply for a loan and most of your loan is going to be used as a nonprofit for your payroll, for any rent of the location in which you're at, for certain other covered activities, then that part of the loan ultimately becomes a grant. You don't have to pay for it. So in part, a nonprofit would have to calibrate what's in its interest, knowing what its basic needs are in terms of having monies for their budget and how they spend those monies, which parts of this were forgivable, which parts are not. Next slide. Are small businesses owners eligible for the 600 per week unemployment benefit? Under the law, the CARES Act, a small business owner is eligible for unemployment insurance benefits if they have been diagnosed with COVID-19, if a member of the person's family has been diagnosed with COVID-19, an individual is caring for a family member with COVID-19, a person's child is unable to attend school because of COVID-19, a person is unable to get to work because of COVID-19 quarantine, a person has lost their job, obviously, because of COVID-19, or a person's place of employment has closed as a direct result of COVID-19. So yes, under those elements of eligibility, they would be eligible. Next slide. What is the available support for small businesses which are sole proprietors with only the owner not drawing a payroll? So a sole proprietor who pays themselves by drawing from the business instead of through the payroll, they're eligible for the PPP program that I have been talking about. So they're eligible even though they are a sole proprietor and the owner only the owner is drawing a payroll. They're eligible for the PPP program. Next slide. What resources are available for seasonal business owners? What will we do? What will we do if they cancel the J-1 visa program? Well, first of all, as long as your business was in operation in February 15th of 2020, even though it was closed for the season, you're still eligible for PPP loans and the emergency grants. So you're a seasonal business, but your business has been in operation, let's say a year or two, but it was in operation on February 15th of this year, even though it wasn't yet open because it wasn't open for the season, you're still eligible for a PP loan and a emergency grant of up to $10,000. Now, if your business uses J-1 visas, and I know a lot do along the shore and whatnot, the compensation of employees whose principal place of residence is outside of the United States is excluded as part of the payroll cost that will be forgiven. So that is, I know, a bit of a challenge to some who use the J-1 visa program, but the law is obviously intended to particularly help U.S. citizens and permanent residents who ultimately are doing work in the United States and who we want to see retained. So, but in every other respect, you're eligible for these programs, even though you're a seasonal business owner. Next slide. My business is an LLC that utilizes 25 independent contractors. Are small businesses like mine who use independent contractors eligible for grants/loans? Well, your small business can apply for the emergency grant that went up to $10,000 and for PPP loans. However, your PPP loan is going to be based on your payroll costs. However, independent contractors will not be included as part of your payroll costs, but since they are eligible, they can apply for their own PPP loan and should apply on their own behalf. Next question. Does applying for the state programs, the state and the Governor Murphy has put out a series of programs, disallow you from applying for the federal aid? If a small business is able to secure funding from other local municipal COVID-19 relief initiatives, would such funding preclude them from being eligible for funding under the CARES Act? And applying and receiving aid from state programs might impact your ability to get the federal emergency $10,000 grant. However, receiving state aid should not affect your PPP application, as long as the state aid didn't fully cover the expenses and or damage incurred by COVID-19. So it's not one of those things where you can get state aid and cover the same exact things that you're going to get from the PPP program, but it doesn't preclude you from applying for the PPP program. Next question. How fast can we get these packages? Well, this is something we are working on very hard with the Small Business Administration federally, with the Secretary of the Treasury and the Treasury Department. It depends how fast the lender can submit your application for the loan and how fast the SBA processes, particularly the emergency grant applications. So this is something that many of us have raised with the Small Business Administrator, and we've recently asked Treasury and small business to accelerate providing lenders and borrower assistance with the PPP program because, you know, you can't wait. And the purpose of the law was to get it out there as quickly as possible. So this is, I understand, you know, standing up a new program, having a mad rush is a challenge, but it's a challenge the government has to meet, and we continue to press them. So, but obviously getting hooked up with a lender and applying puts you in the queue, and the sooner one does that, the better. Next slide. I have a retail store that I am running by myself. Am I eligible to apply for these stimulus packages? Yes, you are eligible to apply for a PPP program, even if you are you're the only person that draws from the income of the store. You are eligible to apply for both of these packages. Next question. Are these loans, grants, first come, first served? The answer is yes, they are. Um, we are in the midst, as the administration has requested, another $250 billion from the Congress to augment the program. We are in the midst of, we support that, but we, as I said previously, we support it to ensure that everybody gets a shot at it. And not only those with large financial institutions who have relationships with large financial institutions alone, that they broaden the universe of lenders, and that we can make sure that this everybody has a shot. And as part of that, we are looking to extend the time past what the law presently requires now. But it is at this point, first come, first serve. Next slide. Excuse me. As a very small business with 2 freelance contractors, how and where do we apply for our help? Our landlord is still seeking full rental payment. Utilities are still due. Our rental insurance is still due. We don't qualify for loans. What do we do? Okay, well, first of all, I do think you qualify for the PPP loan, even though you may have some freelance contractors, but as a business yourself, you qualify for the PPP loan. You certainly sound like you would qualify for the EIDL, the emergency grant of up to $10,000. And so I think that still worthy. Of course, when you talk about rental payments, utilities, rental insurance, these are forgivable parts of the loan. So it would make sense to look at the PPP program because I do believe, based on the question, that you would qualify. And if you want to follow up with our offices, those who fall in this category, happy to do so and help you. Next slide. Is there any relief for business owners who were meant to open their business on April 1st of 2020? Well, if your business is brand new and was first opening its doors on April the 1st of this year, then you don't qualify. You don't qualify for the PPP or any of the emergency grants. However, as I mentioned earlier in a response to another question, if you're a seasonal business that was already in operation, but your season doesn't start until April, then you do qualify for PPP and emergency grants. But if you were starting a brand new business and it was intended to start on April 1st, 2020, under these programs, you're not eligible. Next question. I applied for the $10,000 relief grant last week. However, further reading seems to indicate that the grant is only offered in conjunction with a loan. Is this true? Do I need to take out a loan in order to receive the grant? Well, the $10,000 emergency grant is structured as a loan advance. So you have to apply for the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, to receive the advance. But during the application process, you need to indicate that you're only interested in the advance. And if you qualify, the advance does not have to be repaid under any circumstance. Next question. There was some discussion that for the first time, self-employed people would be eligible to receive unemployment. My store has been closed by order of Governor Murphy since March 19. Am I eligible to apply for unemployment? Yes, a self-employed person is eligible for unemployment through this legislation. That's normally not the case, but through the CARES Act, a self-employed person is eligible for unemployment if, and I rattled off before in response to another question, what are some of the conditions? You're eligible if you're self-employed. You're eligible to receive unemployment if you personally have been diagnosed with COVID-19, if a member of your family has been diagnosed with COVID-19, if you're an individual caring for a family member with COVID-19, if your child is unable to attend school because of COVID-19, If you're unable to go to your business because you're quarantined under COVID-19, if your business has been closed as a result of the order that Governor Murphy gave, you would be eligible for applying for unemployment. I think last question. What is covered as services for loans that are under a forgivable loan? So again, the Paycheck Protection Program provides up to a $10 million loan, and a large portion of that can be forgiven if the proceeds of the loan are used for payroll costs, mortgage interest payments, rent, utilities. That portion of the loan is totally forgivable, meaning that it becomes a grant in essence. Now, recently, the Department of the Treasury capped the forgivable amount for non-payroll costs at 25%. I had the conversation with Secretary Mnuchin today. I said New Jersey is a high-cost state. The reality is that rents can be very high here, and it can be a very significant part of a small business owner's expenses. So I asked him to recalibrate based upon different parts of the country having different costs. Not fair to do one size fits all, that only 25% cap on non-payroll costs. But we're looking at that, especially if we have a second tranche of money. But yes, those parts of the loan that are for payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, that's all forgivable. And a payroll costs includes compensation, and however that compensation is going to the employee, a salary, a wage, a commission, or some similar compensation payment that you have obligated to that employee for vacation, parental, family, or medical, or sick leave is allowable as well. And so those are some of the ways in which those services for the loan are under the program a forgivable loan. I hope that this was helpful. For more resources, small business, unemployment, what the direct payment to individuals would be under the law, other issues. Many of our small business owners are first responders and whatnot. They do tremendous efforts for their communities. We have provisions in the law for our health institutions and hospitals. All of that can be found at menendez.senate.gov/coronavirus. And with that, thank you for watching, and we look forward to answering more questions as we continue to have the program evolve, and through our office directly. If we haven't answered your question, please reach out. Jillian Berkowitz in our New Jersey office, as well as Erica Calderon in our Washington office. There are two small business experts. One works in the legislative side, knows the law really well. The other one works in our outreach here in New Jersey. So Jillian Berkowitz in New Jersey out of the Newark office, Erica Calderon out of Washington. If you want to call or email them, you'll find it at menendez.senate.gov/coronavirus. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing your businesses prosper in the future.